Hello, friends. Welcome to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Curtis Lawson, and we are here to teach that every successful construction project has four components demonstrated by this simple drawing of a house. The foundation is proper planning. The left wall is your team, the right wall is communication, and the roof is proper execution. Have all four of these components in place and your project will succeed. We're here to help professionals and homeowners alike make the best decisions about designing, planning, and building custom homes. If you'd like more information about how Shepherd can help you with your project or business, visit us at yourprojectshepherd.com. And now, here's today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, as always, Curtis Lawson. And today we are joined by Ken Nelson. And Ken is the group sales manager for Panasonic. Is that right? Is that the right title? The national sales manager, group sales manager?
Technically, that's absolutely the title. But I work in, obviously, sales for builders and distribution. I work in contractor sales. I'm doing product development work, product management work. I'm doing, when you get a certain amount of time and grade in some of these corporate organizations, you really wear like 50 hats because you have time and grade, right?
Right.
That's what we do.
So I think most people are aware that Panasonic makes all kinds of products like consumer electronics and appliances and overseas even they do tons of things that I never even realized that Panasonic did. I was in Japan last year, touring the headquarters and some other facilities, and I was blown away by like all the products that Panasonic makes.
It's pretty remarkable. I mean, as well, when I was back there, we would go to these giant stores that we, like giant Walmart stores and bigger, only bigger, much bigger. And you would see like home healthcare products, everything from the massage chairs to massage leggings to massage socks. And then go two more aisles down and there would be our ventilation products. Three more aisles down, there would be air conditioning products, both from a installed standpoint where you would install them. And then some of them you were just plug in, right? You were just amazing how many products we have. And quite frankly, the consumer portion of the Panasonic world has really contracted. We're doing more and more, like if you're driving down the road, I think you have a truck. When you look at that multifunction just screen on that truck, I have a pretty good idea that that's a Panasonic screen. If you look behind it, it'll say made by Panasonic. So it's just remarkable all the things Panasonic looks at and has a dog in the fight, so to speak.
But in the building world, though, as a builder, I mostly deal with ventilation fans, and more recently ERVs and things like that. So as far as the U.S. market for building products, what do you guys focus on?
So we've been in the U.S. With ventilation products, exhaust fans, bath fans, for the last 20, 25 years. We started out with, and it's very interesting how we came about because we had a very quiet fan, but it was more money. And, builders and fan manufacturers, competitive fan manufacturers said, oh my God, you will never sell that. That's just too expensive and you'll never sell it. And we kind of targeted that, really expensive market, luxury house, where they didn't want to hear a fan run. And the reality was that the market that really picked up these really super efficient and super quiet fans was the low income market, because they could let that fan run 24/7 and it would solve a ton of their moisture problems, right? In a low income property where you have a small footprint, but a potentially large population, moisture is a big problem, both for the occupant and for the facility. And they could satisfy both with these really nice exhaust fans. And boy, the market just exploded from there.
But personally, your group just focuses on the ventilation stuff, right?
My group is specific to ventilation. Yes, we do. As you said, exhaust fans. I have supply fans. I have inline fans. I have dryer booster fans. I have the ERVs, and the ERVs. It's kind of ERVs and HRVs have been around for a long time, but they are quickly gaining traction here in the U.S. And the reason being is because we find that for an efficient or an energy efficient or even a safe house, the house has to have a tight envelope, right? They can't have these air leaks to the outside. And what what an ERV will give you is it'll give you both exhaust and supply ventilation at a predictable and how do we say it? It's predictable and uneventful, right? I don't want to have to wonder if I'm going to have the wind blow to get air in, or if I have to have a temperature change, because air moves with temperature change, right? As the temperature goes up, that pressure expands and pushes air out, and then air is drawn in on a cooler space. So I don't want to have any of those random things occur. I don't want to have to open my windows, because in some places you just can't open your windows, or you don't want to open your windows.
Like here in Houston?
Well,
like
in some places,
1 month out of the year.
In some places, right. So we want predictable and uneventful ventilation, and I can do that very easily and very affordably with an ERV.
Yeah, and as you said, those have been around for 30, 40 years, probably, the 80s, probably. I think they started somewhere in there.
They started in Canada with what they call HRVs, and actually that's an interesting thing to talk about, HRVs versus ERVs. An HRV, a heat recovery ventilator, and in the codes, when you look at your codes, almost all the codes will refer to an HRV, capital H, capital R, capital V, small s, HRV system, heat recovery ventilation system. So in the market, though, there's HRVs, which is a heat recovery ventilator, and they have ERVs. Both of these are heat recovery ventilation systems. HRV has a non-permeable piece of material between the two airstreams, so moisture won't pass through. Therefore, I have to have a drain line. So if you have temperatures, what we're looking for is how moisture moves through that medium of the plate. And in an HRV, it doesn't. It just falls out as condensation. There's a strong potential for what we call a phase change, where that humidity that's in the airstream will get cool and condensate or start to drip, right? So in an HRV, you'll have a drain installed in there. With an ERV, and ERVs, technically, they're called enthalpic recovery ventilation. People don't really spell enthalpic very well.
They say energy.
They say energy recovery ventilation, or ERV for short. It does the exact same thing. It's a very similar size and shape for the core, but the material between the airstreams are different. So the material it's a paper, but it allows moisture and at the molecular level to move between the airstreams. And if you think about how moisture moves, it moves from, again, high pressure to low. So if I have a heated moisture airstream on one side and a cooler airstream on the other, I'm going to have more grains of moisture in that heated airstream, and it's going to drive it across into the cooler airstream. So that moisture is continuously balanced. And especially in Houston, the beauty of the ERV is it literally rejects excessive moisture back out of the house. So it's going to make your dehumidifier work less, which your dehumidifier is an expensive little project, because that's just another air conditioner. In fact, in some worlds, we call that a bad air conditioner, because it doesn't really make it cold. All it does is get down to that dew point to create that phase change into a bucket into the device.
Just dries the air.
Just dries the air, right. And that's not fresh air, by the way. So if it's, internal to the room, if it's just, recirculating, it's not fresh air. It's just moisture is pulled out of it. With the ERV, we're constantly bringing fresh air in and taking exhaust air out.
Actually, this was something that I had slated for later in the discussion, but we'll go ahead and get into this now since we're on ERVs. But why is an ERV an important part of a IEQ strategy and a ventilation strategy for houses that are being built today? And why should you use an ERV instead of just a fresh air ventilator?
Well, so, and there are certain climates that can use a fresh air ventilator, but remember, air pressure, if I push air in, I'm going to push that air into the interstitial spaces as it finds its cracks and crevices. Even the tightest house, we don't build submarine houses, right? Even passive house, I think, is 0.6 air changes per hour, right? So every house has a certain degree of where air will move through the walls or spaces or wherever those cracks and crevices are. With a supply air, what we're going to do is we're going to pressurize the house and drive that air from the inside of the house into the interstitial spaces and then out. With an exhaust fan, if we run just an exhaust only, we're going to draw the air from inside the house and then draw that outside air in. All of those, neither of those are any problem at all as long as your air temperature is the same. The challenge we have in cold climates where I'm drawing cold air in from the outside with an exhaust only, I draw cold air in, that air warms up and my humidity drops out, right? Because warm air is less humid from cold air. But in this climate, if I draw that air in, if I have 100 degrees at 70% or 80% humidity, and I cool that air to 70 degrees, now I'm at 100%. So somewhere between the outside of the house, the inside of that wall, and your inside living space, that moisture is going to turn to rain. That's one of the reasons if you ever go to like Florida and you go into these old hotels with carpeting and you walk in, you smell all that musty smell,
Yeah.
right? That's people opening the door, all that moist air is rushing in, hitting the air conditioning, and it falls to the floor, right?
Yeah, you smell that a lot at the beach, the old beach hotels
Those
here
old beach
in
hotels.
Texas too.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So that's just air conditioning. We love our air conditioning. But when that humid air comes in, it hits that air conditioning, it falls to the ground, and then it becomes moldy and mildewy, and you can smell that. So with an ERV or an HRV, but we like ERVs because they're allowing that moisture to either be rejected or used to make your house about normal, right? We're searching for that 50% humidity level. ERVs bringing both air in and air out at the same time. So I'm not driving it through the walls, nor am I drawing it through the walls, and I'm giving it a predictable path. So it's just from a structural standpoint, it's far better because I don't have to wonder where the air is coming from. And it's being filtered before it comes in. So if it's a high pollen day, I'm bringing that air in, but I'm filtering it first. If I have a lot of air inside the house that's bad or musty, I'm constantly diluting that by sending it out and replacing that with fresh air. So now anything that's, as humans, anything that we outgas into that house, and by the way, every human is unique. You might think that your family is all very consistent, but you might have one child with allergies and another child have a different allergy, and grandma and grandpa might have an allergy or something along those lines. But they're all unique and they all have unique experiences and they all bring home unique things.
Mm-hmm.
And now you shove all that into a space and let it all mix. And now you've got the potential for everybody to be challenged, right? That was kind of the rub with COVID. When COVID came in, when the kids would bring COVID home, well, you're in that house. If it's a super tight house with no ventilation, it's just not a good strategy to manage your health challenges.
Yeah. So you and I were at a Houston Builders Association event yesterday. We had Gord Cook from Construction Instruction who was presenting. It was a great discussion. We got to a point toward the end, and we were talking about green building in general. And I'm going to kind of tie this into the whole IAQ discussion here, but there started to be a little pushback from the room because we started talking about, hey, as part of an IAQ strategy, maybe you should eliminate a gas range from the house. And then it was like, you can't take our gas range away. There was this whole thing, I don't know, a year or two ago where somebody came on TV and said, Joe Biden or the government or whoever is going to take your gas range away. We want all electric stoves in every house in the U.S. by whatever year. It became this whole thing, right? So yesterday when this came up, it was like, no, you can't take our gas range away. But really, at the end of the day, like, we should be looking at what can we do, given the parameters that we have to build houses with now, like we have to build a tight house. It's in the code. Given that requirement, why wouldn't we be doing everything that we can do to make that indoor air quality the best it can be for the occupants, right? And this is kind of a tangent, and Toner and I actually touched on this a few weeks ago on our Christmas episode where we talked about electrification of houses. But we talked about how, why wouldn't you want to do an induction range in a new house instead of a gas range? I mean, it heats more evenly. It's safer to the touch. It's a better product. It doesn't have that blue flame, right? As it relates to IAQ, one of the things that Gord said, this is the whole reason I mentioned that, one of the things that Gord said was that I didn't realize was that the gas, the CO2 produced, or just the gas range, is one of the biggest triggers for children with asthma.
Oh, it's a huge trigger. And it's not just children. It's
people with asthma. Yeah.
People with asthma. Right. And there's an old story about IAQ versus moisture management, right? With moisture management, if you fail at moisture management, I can kill a world-class athlete in 90 days, right? I introduce mold and mildew into the house. He has allergies and it gets into the lungs. You get pneumonia. 90 days, they can win the Olympics one day. 90 days later, gone.
Yeah.
Right? With gas ranges, with any combustible products inside the house. And I Of course, I'm a little more of a zealot when it comes to IAQ in the house, and I've seen candles and all this stuff, but anything that is combustion is actually producing what they call PM 2.5 particulates, right? These tiny little particulates that you breathe into your lungs, right? And these are so tiny that they will pass through your lungs. Your lungs, the human body is designed to evolve and grow old. I mean, we have a lot of internal things that keep us alive and solve a lot of problems for us. But when you get that 2.5 particulate inside your lungs, it passes to your bloodstream. And now, and I say, so moisture will kill you in 90 days. PM 2.5 will maybe take 20 years, because what happens is that goes up through your bloodstream, which goes through your blood marrow, which becomes potentially a leukemia issue. Anything that gets into that over the course of time is problematic. And it's whether you're, smelling diesel fumes all day long or whatever, anything that has that combustion capability. Firefighters have this huge problem with lung cancer. We see all sorts of people in that environment having challenges, and you're seeing standard safety protocols go into effect that is going to change the way that their future holds for them, because it's just our bodies are our bodies, and there's certain things that we can't stop. And the thing about PM 2.5, whether it's from smoke or combustion items or whatever, every creature on Earth that has a lung can be affected or destroyed with smoke and that kind of thing, right? That smoke has cyanide in it, and there's all sorts of components that will go in that. It goes into the lung, and it'll paralyze the lung, which is what, when you get a smoker's high, that's your lungs being paralyzed. You're a little bit hypoxic where you can't breathe, and then all of a sudden you get this rush of dopamine to try to cover that up. And that's what that's all about, is your lungs are paralyzed. You're not getting oxygen flow into your blood. It's a huge problem. So long story short, which is way past, there's no longer a long story short, but we have children with undeveloped lungs. We have seniors with overdeveloped lungs, or COPDs from previous life experiences. All of those are easily affected with combustion products that are occurring inside the house. And I got to be honest with you, when I was a kid, we had a trash burner, we had the fireplace, we had the whole package, right? But not anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
it just doesn't work for us.
Well, and back then the houses just weren't built
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The envelope wasn't like it is now.
I could either look through the window or the crack on the side where the frame hit the.
So I think that homeowners don't think about IAQ hardly at all unless they have somebody in the house who has either asthma or a chemical sensitivity or something like that. And I think builders don't really think about it too much either, unless it's like something that's a code issue, or something that's that people are making them do, or the code is making them do, right?
Well,
But
we all kind of reflex a little bit when someone tells us we have to do something.
yeah,
But from a builder's perspective, I don't worry so much about, and I appreciate that as a builder, you have to adhere to the code. And that's, in some cases it costs more, some cases it costs less, some cases it just becomes the cost of doing business.
right.
But the more critical component of it is, if you allow this product that you build to fail, I mean, how long are you on that speed dial for the homeowner? So when there's moisture coming down the windows, or if they have, wet spots on their paint where their paint's bubbling because someone didn't do a good job of managing moisture load. And we see this with exhaust fans. The biggest challenge I have with exhaust fans is, when was the last time your realtor toured people through your house and said, oh, by the way, see that exhaust fan? That's running right now. And that's keeping this house clear of moisture and mildew, but you can't hear it because it's invisible. Typically, and I'm probably not the nicest guy in the world, but when I see these really crappy fans that make so much noise and I'm walking through an open house, I turn them on for 60 minutes because you know what? We have to sell our homeowner on the value of our products, right? Your product is the entire house. As a builder, your product is the entire house. You want to go through and highlight the value that you bring to that thing. And for me, as a long-term salesperson, if I come to you and I bring you an item that costs $5 and I give you only $2 worth of value, you throw me off the job. But if I come to you with an item that costs $5, but you can get $50 in value for that, I'm your new best friend, right?
Right.
And that's what ventilation. That's one of the missing components of the ventilation in the house, is that the builders don't understand that this is a value added, and you do, of course. And I guarantee you, when you're touring customers through your house or you're talking about your house, you're talking about smart ventilation,
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure.
Because the guy down the road is not providing smart ventilation. He may not want to talk about ventilation at all because he's simply doing a code required
Code
product,
minimum. Yep.
code minimum, which means literally the code inspector looks up there and sees a fan in the hole and says, "Oh, well done."
Yeah.
Right?
And
It doesn't have to work.
it's probably, hey, I got 3 bids on my AC system, and that was the cheapest bid I got, and it's in.
Least expensive, 20-year-old kid in there installing it. He's got a great big hammer and a tiny little roll of tape and all good. So for us at Panasonic, our goal is to help help your contractors, help our building science professionals come out and make sure that everybody understands the value that we bring with correct and smart ventilation, right? Um, it's just super critical because the house fails, you own that.
Yeah.
I mean, the occupant fails and he fails as a result of the house. And you don't see it as much here in this market, but in the Puget Sound market where I live, we have whole companies that make a living doing building forensics.
Mm-hmm.
And simply all they do is they go out and they have engineers and lawyers. The engineers go out and say, who installed that so poorly? And they chase that all the way down through the contractor, the builder, the contractor, the engineer that wrote it up, and the architect that drew it up. And they want everybody to take some responsibility for that. And you don't see that here yet, but you wait. You're going to start seeing more and more.
It's getting bigger and bigger here. I mean, Toner, who who's on my show all the time, that's a cornerstone of his business. Is he gets hired either by builders to help defend against that, or by homeowners who have those claims. In fact, I was on one of his projects 2 days ago, helping him do an inspection for that exact same thing. Right. It was a semi-custom house that was built a few years ago, and they're having mold issues. So guess what? Here we are.
So we saw that a long time ago in the 70s and 80s with condominiums, right? I mean, when was the last time, condominiums have just come back into vogue, if you will. They went from condominiums to townhouses, but the HOAs of a condominium could be so aggressive, right? You put 100 people in there paying $100 a month. They have a cash revenue. They can go out and hire lawyers, and any little issue, they want somebody else to pay for it. So they would go after that. And that was a big challenge with condominiums, and it slowed that process down for a long time.
So let's kind of get back into IEQ, because I wanted to kind of bring in the main product that we're here to talk about today, which is Swidget. But kind of the last thing on IEQ that I wanted to touch on is there's a lot of other sources I think that people don't consider that are affecting their indoor air quality. You mentioned occupants, how every person's kind of bringing something different into the house on a daily basis. Some of the overlooked things in your house that affect your air quality, or even the products that are installed, or the furniture that you bring in, your carpet, there's off-gassing and things like that, right? There's your pets. There's the pet dander, the odors and all the things that go along with that, the doggy door that's opening and closing. What are some other air quality effectors that you can think of?
Well, I'll give you two of them. One of them is absolutely occupant created, and the other one is part of the structure. But I was just at an engineering firm today, and we were talking about I have rental units, and one of the caveats is I don't allow fish tanks or cats, right? People are going like, fish tanks? What do you mean fish tanks? Fish tanks are nothing but water bubblers, right? They just bubble water, moisture into your air all the time.
Yeah.
And all that's doing is looking for a cold surface to condensate on, right? We talk about phase change. Any moisture load that gets put into the air diffuses, and all it does is it moves from high pressure to low. So it's going to look for a low pressure system, which is a temperature change where it can actually pull that moisture and diffuse. So literally, I've had people call me up complaining, hey, I've got your fan running continuously, but my fish tank is constantly running out of water. I'm like, that fish tank was going to run out of water without the fan. The fan is just moving that pathway, a predictable pathway of that water out of the house rather than having it find a surface area. The other item, and then cats just, they come with cat boxes. And, of course, having said that, I have a big dog that has hair everywhere. And, as humans, we give up some things. But on the other hand, my fans run 24/7. I'm good with that. And I vacuum my fan grill. People call me up and say, well, how come you don't have filters on your exhaust fans? Well, anything that gets aerosolized, I want it out. So when that grill assembly is dirty, I know that stuff I'm not dusting, breathing, or kicking around on the floor, right? So I vacuum that off and get it out. So the other item I wanted to mention would be attached garages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Attached garages at my garage. I've got herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, oil, gas, all these things that I store in my garage. And my garage is unheated. So I'm in a cold climate. My house is heated, but I open that door, the air comes in, all that garage stuff woofs into the house.
Yep.
Right. So if I were sensitive to any of those particulates, it would create a problem. And it could create a problem.
And if you park a car in the garage and you
park a car in the garage,
maybe you go out there and start the car to let it warm up in the winter,
And how about people who back their car into the garage? And I'm like, oh my God, don't back your car into the garage, for heaven's sakes.
Tailpipe facing the laundry room.
Tailpipe facing the laundry room. It's just, and I had a neighbor who did that all the time. And I must have told her 50 times, don't back the car in there. That's just bad mojo.
You're the crazy air quality guy.
Yeah. Well, but how many people would see that? How many people see that? And then they say, oh, then I just open the door and go in the house. And that, I'm like, all that stuff just enters the house. Right. And then if you have no ventilation system, it enters, but it doesn't go anywhere. Right. So now you're living in that for the next couple of hours while it either stays buoyant or becomes ballistic and falls to the floor. So those are the two things. And then we're going to jump to Swidget, which I really look forward to talking about. But one of the challenges with exhaust fans, and this is another thing that we talk about a lot, is an exhaust fan has no value if it doesn't get turned on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I had 3 girls. My girls would go into the bathroom and shower, and they wouldn't, if the fan was on when they went in there, it'd be on when they left. But if it wasn't on, it wouldn't be on when they left.
I fight this battle every single day.
Yeah. So literally they're good to go with 20 minutes with a blow dryer clearing that mirror rather than turn an exhaust fan on, because they just don't know, even though I tell them every stinking day, turn the fan on. But anyway, so we're constantly trying to figure out ways to help our occupants, our homeowners, with automated triggers, right? So from a fan perspective, we literally put automated triggers in the fans, and our low income property managers will almost always install an automated trigger fan, because as a renter or an occupant, again, you're not even looking at the fan, right? So they want that fan to work regardless. And that's where Swidget comes into play, because it's not just moisture loads that we're trying to manage, right? It's not just, and there's 2 ways to trigger a fan currently. And actually the most popular way is with a motion sensor, right? So you walk in, the fan turns on. However, I will tell you that there is no basis in science that says moisture will resolve a moisture bloom, that's relative to a moisture bloom, right?
Right.
And people don't fully understand where moisture comes from in the house. So literally, obviously, if you boil water, you boil potatoes or pasta or whatever, that there's water being blossomed into the house. But you know what? You bake a cake, you're taking a liquid, taking the moisture out and converting it to a solid, right?
Yeah.
You're phase changing the moisture out into a vapor, which converts to a solid.
Making coffee.
One of my favorite stories is people ask me, how fast does moisture move from one end of your house to the other?
Can you smell the coffee brewing in the morning?
How long does it take the smell of coffee to go from one end of your house to the other? Because that coffee smell is on a vapor trail coming across the house. And where's it going? It's going to a place of low pressure, which is typically a cold surface where it's be wicking that condensation off, that moisture out, I should say, or an exhaust fan or whatever might be running.
Or it's following the path of the return air or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. It's in an airstream moving, though, is the long and short of it. So a fan has no value if it doesn't get turned on. So we create automated triggers. Motion sensors. I'm good with motion sensor because it gets the job done. And it was the lowest cost for the longest time. It was extremely low cost, right? It's a passive infrared sensor that just, unfortunately, it can be sensitive enough where even the dog going by, or I walk by in a hallway outside of a bathroom and that fan will trigger on, and I can get some nuisance triggers with that. So now we've added condensation controls. And what that does is it takes the ambient temperature, it takes a humidity sensor, and looks at the two and looks at how it approaches dew point, because we don't care about humidity. I don't want to say we don't care about humidity, but from a fan manufacturer standpoint, some bathrooms, they like to be really humid. Some of them want to be really dry. But what I don't want is I don't want phase change on the wall. I don't want water on the surface.
Hmm.
So I set my fans at 80% humidity. So it has to get pretty wet in there before the fan triggers on. I say pretty wet, but moisture goes up. So that fan triggers pretty fast when I'm taking a shower or
Yep.
whatever. So it triggers pretty fast. So I love the condensation sensors. I'll tell you, there's two approaches to the condensation sensor. We like them in the fan, integrated into the fan, but you can also put condensation sensors on a wall switch, right? We
Yep.
have those as well. And I'll tell you that there's two caveats to that. If I put that on an interior wall, right? On an interior wall, that condensation switch is going to be at 70 degrees or whatever, and it's going to trigger slow because it's going to take a minute for that moisture load to go from the ceiling and draw down.
Yep.
If I put it on an exterior wall and it's cold out, that wall is going to trigger really fast because now it's got a bigger delta. If I put it on an exterior wall and it's really warm outside, it's going to go even slower because now that condensation doesn't measure it. So it measures at that surface temperature, right? It's
Mhm.
not right there in the ceiling where all that moisture load is going. It takes a minute for the moisture to get there. But I do like condensation sensors because they come on when there's moisture. And that's what it's all about, is starting with that process to remove that moisture from the space.
So Swidget is basically creating another kind of trigger option, right?
Yep.
For a number of things, and not just temperature and humidity, but you can. So actually, we should probably back up and just talk about kind of what Swidget is to start with for people listening or watching. So Swidget looks like kind of like a normal light switch or receptacle, other than it's got an insert in the middle, and you can swap these inserts out any number of different devices, right?
Right. So it depends on what you as a builder or you as the occupant or homeowner want to have triggered. So I have carbon dioxide triggers. I have motion triggers. I have temperature, humidity. I have modules without triggers, for heaven's sakes, that I can just put on my Wi-Fi. And I have one of my favorite ones that's hardly ever used is the power outlet.
Hmm.
So in multifamily, especially, I can take that power outlet and it's got just two large capacitors built into it, as well as the Wi-Fi capability. And I put that in a receptacle near the exit door on the inside of the house. Now, your code required to have lighting, emergency lighting on the corridor, but you got to find the door first, right? So I can put that power goes out, or for who cares what reason, it gives you light for 30 to 60 minutes right at the exit door.
Hmm.
That's just one thing that Swidget can do for us.
There's
But
there's like a camera module now too, right?
there's a camera module. So I literally, in my shop where I have my RV and my truck, I can put a camera module in there. I have, then I can just check that at any time. And I can set that up as it also has a motion sensor integrated into it, where if motion occurs in my shop, I can get basically a text or a nudge on my Swidget app to tell me that there's motion detected in my shop, and I can raise the question, well, why?
Yeah, and that could be pretty inconspicuous too, because again, it's like a normal
It's
light
on a
switch, and it just has this little or
On
receptacle, so you
right.
can have those on the wall, on the down low, whatever, and you can have that camera notify you if something's going on, which is pretty cool.
We do a lot of that with multifamily. And I shouldn't say a lot. We've done some with multifamily where they'll put that camera in the wall switch facing the front door. So when the unit is empty, that camera will let them know when either service people have come in or if somebody inappropriate has come into that space. And you've got a record and a sensor that's telling you that something is either amiss or is correct. And then when you rent the space, you pull that module out and you can put something else in there for who knows what reason,
Yeah.
right? But we've had a lot of good response with the carbon dioxide because now I can put a receptacle in a bedroom, in a kid's bedroom, and I have a carbon dioxide sensor on there. The carbon dioxide sensor, when it triggers, it reaches a certain value, it will trigger, it can communicate with the exhaust fan or the ERV and put the ERV in boost or the exhaust fan in exhaust fan mode, if you will. And then now I can get air change into that bedroom, right? But again, it has no value. The fan or the ERV has no value if it doesn't get turned on. So
Right.
we're figuring out different ways to get that turned on for the right reasons, not for the wrong, just, the kids leave it running for 3 days and nothing happens. Or you walk out of the house, your cabin or whatever, and it's running and you forgot to shut it off, or who cares what. I also use my Swidget wall switches as astral timers. So I have all my exterior lights set up so they come on a half hour before sunset, and then they turn off at 11 p.m.
Yep.
Right. So the beauty of it is, and I had some other brands in there as astral timers, but every time the power went out, and it doesn't go out at my house very often, but I'd have to go in and reset the clocks on
Yep.
every single one of those. And I had 5 or 6 of them, and that was miserable. Now with the Wi-Fi, it just picks up my Wi-Fi and all is good.
I have the same thing at my house. In fact, I have not gotten advanced with the Swidget yet. That's all I have mine doing is my exterior lighting
Is the lighting.
On a timer function. But you're right, that is great, because the ones I had before, and our power goes out all the time, unfortunately. Our grid sucks. But,
hey, careful now.
Sorry, Centerpoint. But every time it went out, I would have to go through it and reprogram all those stupid switches. And
Right.
so now with the Swidget devices, I never touch it.
I literally would carry my little bar stool with me as I went to each and every one of those things, and had to go through the whole reprogramming process.
So Swidget also works with Google Home and Alexa and all that stuff too, right?
It can work, yes. The automations can reach out and communicate with your Google Home. I haven't actually done that on my Google Home,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that there's more complex stuff. But the integrator industry, which does a lot of this, has used that for the last probably 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
and has done some really great work. The other thing that there's even more on the modules. The modules are becoming even more refined so that you can, they'll get even more fine-tuned on carbon monoxide. They have, we're going to see probably by the end of the year, we're going to see a radon application. We're going to see, again, more of the camera stuff. Also have leak detection. Leak detection is again, I go back to this multifamily, but
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, leak detection. It puts a disc onto the floor, and you would put it like under your sink. If you have, obviously, if you have a dish machine, it would go under the dish machine in that pan, but it would send you a note saying, "Hey, I've detected moisture under this sink or under this dish machine," and boom, you can get in there before you have physical damage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the guys from Swidget came a few months ago and did a presentation for several builders and talked about all the different modules they have in development right now. And it was really impressive, all the things that they're working on.
right. There's not just Wi-Fi, but you have Z-Wave, and they have some other
Right.
protocols that they're doing for more commercial applications. I see, and let's go back to multifamily. One of the things that we were looking for is temperature, right, in the unit. So I was at University of Oregon, one of their housing programs, and they have a horrible problem there because, first of all, the kids that rent student housing, oftentimes they literally have never lived on their own before, right? So they will, and they're students, so they're poor. We automatically
Yeah.
assume that they have no money. But when they go home, they'll just go to the breaker panel and shut everything off, right? So now you've got no heat. They're usually box heaters or toe
Yep.
kicks or whatever, and no heat in there. Well, it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's or whatever, and the temperature drops out, and all of a sudden all the pipes freeze. And now they come back, and there's this monstrous mess. So property management is trying to figure out how to manage that. And what you can do with the Swidget is you set up a temperature trigger, right? So you have the temperature goes to a certain point. The property manager gets a note, and then he can go over and start doing he starts with a knock and talk and says, "Hey, you guys got to keep your temperature up. You got moisture, mildew, whatever, all this stuff." And then if the temperature drops to an extreme value, he can go over and enter and preserve the property space.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things will save, they can save tens of thousands of dollars, both in revenue and expense by the time you get to repair work completed.
Yeah. So I was trying to run some scenarios as I was preparing for this, like some other ways that we could integrate Swidget for either IEQ or energy efficiency and things like that. So obviously the exhaust fan is the big one, right? Using that as a trigger, although we already use the Panasonic, I think it's the Whisper Green exhaust fans that already have the built-in humidity sensor.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's the obvious one. But I was thinking, like, what else could you set up as a trigger, either for IEQ or efficiency? And one of the ones I thought of that is kind of off the wall is, what if you had your automated shades in your house set up with a Swidget device to where when the temperature reached a certain point in your living room, it drops your shades on your windows.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And why not? You could do it with either temperature, you could do it with time of
Time of
day,
day, yeah.
you could do that with just about any concept. The other one that we were looking at is air quality, right? Outdoor air quality.
Hmm.
I mean, it doesn't do me any good if my outdoor air quality is worse than my indoor to pipe all that in the house. And we see that on the West Coast with wildfire smoke.
Yeah, yeah.
The last thing I want to do is
Run the
force.
ERV and suck that air in with a wildfire. Yeah.
Right, right. Because now my house smells like a giant barbecue for the next 6 months, and so we're looking at IAQ from outdoor air being a temporary shut off. So now it just cycles maybe for 10 minutes per hour or 5 minutes per hour, whatever that number that's convenient for you.
Hmm.
Or it says, it stops it until you go over and manually add in more ventilation or more filtration, if you will.
Yeah.
Change your filter from a HEPA. The thing with wildfire smoke is it goes to a charcoal filter. The only way that you can resolve wildfire, you could put a HEPA, you could put a MERV 13, you could put whatever you want in there. But the reality is it has to go to a charcoal filter because that changes the chemistry of the smoke,
Mm.
right? So HEPA is still a scrubber. It just wants to scrub it, and particulates will pass through. But charcoal will literally change the structure.
Mm.
So I'd like to know when I need to do that or whatnot.
Yeah. So it could even be hey, if the air quality hits a certain amount,
Yep.
send me a notification. So at the very least, I could go manually turn off
Absolutely.
the ERV or the fresh air.
And it's remarkable how many, and I can't speak for Houston, but how many areas have bad IAQ. I mean, I can think of like Salt Lake City, for example, where it's just a giant valley between two mountains, and they get at these inversion layers, and literally it could be the middle of spring, most beautiful day in the world, and there's no air moving.
Hmm.
And that air is just, it's a stay-at-home day.
Yeah.
So there's a number of areas like that. There's Eugene, Oregon. There's Fairbanks, Alaska. These are all ones that I've been to and experienced. Just seeing that, my word, you can't see down the road to the next stoplight because it's so nasty.
Yeah.
So, and those are just natural occurring phenomena. They come and they go, right? So I don't have to build in a whole infrastructure to resolve it. I can just pause what I have, right? And then come back to it when it's resolved.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering if like one day there might be a tie-in with some sort of smarter air conditioning system where you've got a temperature sensor in every room using a Swidget device, and when either the temperature or the IAQ hits a certain amount in that room, it can trigger just that room.
There's all sorts of pathways there. You bet. We're looking at doing some really remarkable HVAC configurations to make that come to fruition at a price point where you as a builder can turn around and sell that to every homeowner and have that kind of protection. There's, right now everything's a function of money, right? I could make a pig fly with enough money. I just, order it on an airplane, get it on there and pay money to fly it. But all of these things the technology is improving. The technology is getting less expensive. The form factors are getting so much smaller because I can do so much more with that same amount of IT hardware. It's just remarkable what we're able to do today versus what we couldn't do, even 20 years ago or 10 years ago, if you will.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think about cars, right? There's more computers in my car right now than we ever sent to the moon.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, more technology in this device right here in my hand than.
Yeah. Or your smartwatch, for heaven's sakes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's just remarkable how much information we're able to do with that.
It's great to see how all that technology is being taken and applied to the world of construction, ventilation, because the construction world historically has been a little slow to adapt things like that. So it's great to see this stuff starting to hit us too.
It's a small step process, right? Especially in the construction world. And part of that is that the success of construction comes over time. It's not like I can write some software and go be successful in construction. I've got to go build houses. I mean, I've got to spend a few years figuring out how to build houses. I got to figure a few years figuring out how to build a house that's going to sell and so forth. I mean, in construction, it's not a one and done application. There's no, It's just process. And then I have to go find somebody with money who believes in my idea that's maybe unproven. So it takes a minute. It's going to take a minute. But at the end of the day, and this is one of the things I kind of I would have liked to have talked about yesterday at the event when people were pushing back on these different ideas. It's not just that the feds are trying to contain the way you build a house. Um, the reality is the market is evolving, right? And you can push back all you want about your not wanting to give up your gas, but some of your buyers don't want gas.
Well,
And if stand on that horse for the longest time, you'll either evolve or die, right? I tell my friends it's like going fishing and using the wrong bait. I could put all the wrong bait in the water I want and never catch a fish.
yeah,
So as a builder, you too have to be able to see how the market sales and marketing is kind of a nebulous business because it's just this cloud. There's a reason that it's an art and not a science. You get a Bachelor of Arts in marketing versus a science degree where the math is always perfect and all this
hmm
stuff. It's an art and you have to use your imagination. You have to listen to your customer. I mean, build what your customer wants. That's the easiest way to sell your house,
yeah,
right? So it's not just a matter of I'm going to fight back or push back and put gas in here.
yeah.
I need to get what my customer wants.
Well, one of the things that Gord said that I strongly believe in is that you have to listen to your customer. So ask, what do you love about your current house? What do you hate about your current house? Listen to what they're saying and use that information to say, okay, how is what we're doing going to solve their problem? So that's one of there's a well-known sales system called the Sandler sales method, and one of the keys to that is solving the customer's pain. People buy when they have pain, whether they realize it or not. And pain doesn't have to mean physical pain,
Right.
but like what's causing that customer to lose sleep, or what makes them uncomfortable, or what do they not like, and then present your solution to solve that pain point, right? And so when we talk about pain points for IAQ, like how are you feeling right now? Do you wake up refreshed in the morning? Are your kids not having or are your kids having breathing issues? Like listen to that stuff and say, okay, well, what we're providing is going to help those issues, right?
Right. We're trying to or prevent.
Or prevent, yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah,
you're listening for chronic cough. There's a thing in the medical industry. They call it the oh my gosh, what's the name of it? But they look at kids. It's the asthma salute or something like that. It's the asthma salute because kids walk into the ER if you're low income and your kid's having an asthma issue or whatever. You go to the ER because the ER will not turn you away.
right.
And they have what they call the asthmatic salute, and that's that wrinkle right above the nose because the kid
Yeah.
is constantly, and he'll go in, and that the doctor will look at that and say, "There's a chronic issue going on, and it's most likely an environmentally caused issue."
hmm
Where I live, they had so many kids coming from this apartment complex, and granted, the apartment complex was probably 20, 25 years old, but so many kids were coming in that they sent the health department to inspect, and the health department literally red tagged the whole complex because it was so mold infested. There was so much
hmm
mold and mildew. And I mean, it was just a creating chronic asthma infections, which migrates into pneumonia, which as I talk about that world-class athlete, you go on this steady decline, right? So you don't feel, and this is this is my rant, if you will, but you get that issue where you don't feel right as a kid. The last thing you want to do, or your parent says, "Oh, you're not going outside. Stay here. You don't feel well. You're whatever. Your eyes are watering. Stay here." So what's
hmm
the kid do? He goes in. He plays video games. He eats. Gets no exercise. He eats and drinks and plays video games. No exercise. So now we get this kid who is heavy. Right? He's got no outlet for all this stuff.
Right.
And then we run into childhood diabetes, which is even more expensive as a society to resolve. So all of these things, we have to stay healthy to get healthy to be healthy, right? I mean, there's a long list of things you have to do right to be right. And,
hmm
and the first thing you do is don't do wrong things. I know it sounds really simple, but
Yeah.
you know,
Indoor air quality, it's not a conservative or liberal thing, and that's kind of what I thought about standing up and saying yesterday, but I don't want to get involved in the discussion. But it's not a left wing, right wing thing. It's as builders, if we have the option to give our customers a product that lets them live healthier, why wouldn't we do that? So, and unfortunately, if that means not doing a gas range or not doing a wood burning fireplace or a gas fireplace in their house, I mean, that's, why wouldn't we try our best to give them that product that's going to let them live a healthier life? It's not, oh, I'm being a greenie by not giving them a gas range,
Right. Well, but it also comes down to, again, there's a value set, right? So your home buyer is going to trust somebody, whether it's you when the home buyer goes to buy a house, he's going to give trust to somebody. So which builder is he going to give it to? The one that tells him what he wants to hear, or the one that tells him the truth, perhaps? It's how do we create these trusting communications to the home buyer, these trust building communications. And we have to live by example. We have to demonstrate with examples. We have to tell proper stories that are visual and that, we can see every day and make sense. Because I remember when I bought my first house, even though I'd been in the trades for a long time, I mean, I really didn't know that much about buying a house, right? I didn't know what made for a good fixture or a bad fixture. I didn't know what made, a countertop to me was a flat space, where I could put food on. It didn't have to be granite or quartz or linoleum. It just had to be flat, for heaven's sakes. What's the difference between a concrete patio and a wood deck, right? All of these things. And that's what we hope. And, in the ventilation and the electrical, why would I want a 200 amp panel versus a 100 amp versus a 300 amp? I need the builder to be able to help me understand all of these things to give value to what I'm purchasing.
Yeah, the homeowner trusts us to help them, or to help guide them in the right way to make the right decisions, right?
Right. So I need, so you guys, as a builder, you're the first line of honesty to go to your buyer. If he doesn't trust you, he's not going to buy from you. He's not going to spend money to buy from somebody he doesn't trust, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the whole reasons that I started this podcast, was to help guide people in the right direction to make the best decisions when it comes to building a house or remodeling a house or buying products for a house.
I'm in the process of new roof, right? And I'm in ventilation. I can tell you all about fans and what works, what doesn't work. I can tell you about air pressure. I can tell you about all sorts of things. Yeah, I don't know so much about comp roofing. So, I'm like you. I go to, I don't know about you, but you probably know a lot about roofing. But I go to the CI, to their app, and start looking at both install and materials, because I want to, and it doesn't have to be the materials that they have on their thing, but I want to know the differences, how they're going to respond. I live under fir trees. What's that going to do to me? I want to put some solar on there. I want to do all sorts of things. So I need to learn more about it. And where's my resource? I don't have a huge roofing resource, other than I have to believe the roofer that come to my house that gave me the estimate. And, maybe I want a third party, some advice from somewhere.
Yeah. Well, Ken, thanks for joining us today. I think that kind of wraps up our Swidget and IAQ discussion. I appreciate you joining us, and appreciate your partnership with us here at Crafted and Shepherd too.
Yeah. You know what, Curtis, I really have enjoyed working with you guys. I do like to see quality built products, and I think that's just the path that we all have to, it's about doing the right things right. And I think that's just the way to go.
Yeah. And from my interactions with not only you, but the whole Panasonic team, I mean, that's the feeling that I get about Panasonic as a company too, is you guys want that same thing.
Well, that's part of my mission, is
the company values are great,
is to drive that through our teams. So appreciate that.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for joining us on this episode of the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I hope you'll join us again next time. Take care. If you found us helpful and enjoyed listening, please support us by liking and subscribing here on your podcast platform, and also join us on our YouTube channel. We want to continue to bring you high-quality content and expert guests, and your support truly helps us to continue this journey. If you have any questions for me or my guests, or any feedback for us, you can email us at podcast@yourprojectshepherd.com. Thanks again.